Hey, ARHayes. A convict's thoughts coming to you bright and early. I appreciate all the well wishes and thinking of me. Incurred some diabetic issues on the mend now. Pretty tired, but I just wanted to jump on here and say thank you to every single one of you that sent best wishes to not only myself but to my wife. Very, very meaningful, and I'm blessed to have all of you, all of the subscribers, and everybody involved in my channel. I want to jump in real quick. I actually tried to do this video the other night, and that's when I incurred the problem, and obviously that video had to be taken down. And I'm talking in regards to the Idaho 4 and also the Delphi case. It is getting to be very visual at some issues that are transpiring in our courtrooms nowadays. Could it be because of the national spotlight via social media, and now we have Facebook groups, and we got, the mainstream media trying to keep up and combat with that to where they can still make their money by presenting cases. It's becoming a battle. And the unfortunate thing about it is it's really putting a lot of negative spotlight directly onto mainstream media, because not many people through the years saw the fact that they did not present the facts accordingly when it came to not only high-profile cases, but any cases that they covered. News spread like wildfire, and now I think many are beginning to realize a lot of it is not as factual as everybody wants it to be. But I think the big emphasis has to be looked at in our courtrooms. I personally, of course, have a little bit of a different feeling and outlook on it because I've endured what it feels like to be in the defendant's chair in said courtrooms. I know what it's like to have a judge that just might have a conflict of interest within the case. I know what it's like to have to dismiss my representation in hopes of getting better counsel to protect my rights. We are watching some great oddities happening within these cases, and it's coming very forefront, and it's very blatantly obvious. Let's just talk about the Delphi case. I get stopped almost every day in my tracks as I try to study this case. I want to learn the facts. I want to read the PCA. I want to dig into how they built the evidence against this man, and how it all came about. And from the get-go, I was already baffled by a lot of the evidence. And then, I take a look at how they presented the 3 identity sketches, and every single one of them's different. And then I look at some of the suspects that were deemed not suspects, even though, boy, they sure look like they could be credible suspects in this case compared to Richard Allen. But I haven't figured whether I see him as guilty or not guilty. But what I do see is a judge that's very much so putting the case at risk while overstepping her boundaries. No judge should ever have say when it comes to the counsel of a defendant if the defendant wants those counselors to be defending him. These are public defenders. I understand there's possibly some issues in regards to a leaked set of photos or some evidence within the case. I get it. I completely understand. That could be a really big issue. However, we're not fully sure of what has happened there as of yet. All we know is a judge made herself visible within the courtroom stating that the 2 council members for the defendant had recused themselves from the case. Well, now those lawyers want to still be defending Richard Allen. They are standing strong that they did not want to leave this case. So what's the judge do? She oversteps her boundary and states that they could no longer be the lead counsel for Richard Allen, and she appointed a lawyer of her choosing, one that happens to maybe be a conflict of interest through a friendship. I don't know that as fact. It's a little bit of research, and it just seems like it could be fact. But, boy, there's some swirling wind, and for years, appeals have been won based off of decisions the judges make, based off of poor counsel, based off of poor prosecution. Evidence is found down the road that finds somebody innocent when they've already been deemed to be proven guilty in a court of law. Is our court system, now that it's coming directly in the vision of everybody, is it really starting to show the seams are breaking a little bit, and maybe it's not as perfect as many of us think it is? I've never thought it was perfect, only because I've endured it. But I'll tell you what, I talk to people on a daily that swear that we have the best justice system and the best court system in the entire world. I can't agree with that, considering look at how many appeals happen on a daily basis and how many actually win. It shows we have problems. If we even zoom over now to the Idaho 4 case, there's a lot of questions going on here. Not only questions in regard to the prosecution's tactics and the way that they're presenting this case and the way they're combating discoverable evidence, but then you have to look at another judge that could possibly be overstepping his boundaries. Why do I say that? Why would a judge need to look over said evidence as the IGG information in chambers when he has no knowledge and no capability of understanding what is valuable and not valuable within that evidence? That's why you have experts. We've already had experts in the courtroom testify directly in a motion hearing that he listened. We're talking about John Judge. He listened to every word that they said, and now he almost seems like he feels like he's a good enough expert that he's going to be able to sit down and dictate, based off of what he sees in front of him, what the defense should get. The defense should get that whole file. They should get everything. It's discoverable. It matters. But for some reason, our court system is now dictating, well, evidence is going to be dictated by this very court, not based off of case law or built knowledge of expert. It's going to be based off of a judge's decision on what we're going to allow to be discoverable in a case. This is how errors are made. This is how guilty people get let loose as if they're innocent. And this is how innocent people get convicted, serve 27 to 35 years in a penitentiary, and then get exonerated and let out after their life is over. And this is the system that we all deem is working so well? I don't think so. I think each and every single day the flaws are becoming more noticeable, and I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot more scrutiny, there's a lot more eyes directly on everything that's happening. If a case is just not caught red-handed, we know you're guilty, and taking a plea bargain, I think each and every single case, especially on these two big grand stages as these two are going to have issues. How big does the issue have to be to get a case as a mistrial or thrown out? Because both of these cases at this very point are walking a fine line where we already know these are just set up for appeal. It's just a matter of when are they going to get in front of the appeal courts, the Supreme Court. They're going there. It's going to be there before you know it. For someone like me, I want true justice. And when I say true justice, it starts immediately after the crime happens. I want people to be held accountable in the investigation. I want the steps to be followed appropriately that our country states are necessary to be followed. It's just as though people want me to follow the law. Otherwise, I could be punishable by a prison sentence if I break said law. If I go break into your home, I'm facing a prison sentence. If I steal your car, I'm facing a prison sentence. If I break those set forth rules and guidelines, repercussions happen to me. I believe from the very beginning in an investigation, each step needs to be followed appropriately. I want people to be held accountable that the crime scene is handled correctly. The correct people are in the crime scene doing the investigation, the forensics, and everything necessary to be, not people that should not be there. I also feel as though in this case, the Idaho 4, one of the biggest mistakes are all of the different agencies that came together to try to work on it. I think it's great that they all wanted to work together, but I think they all had a different direction and agenda that they were working. And I think that hurts the case. It's my opinion. Others will disagree. They're going to feel as though because the FBI came on board, it helped the case. It doesn't seem like it, because at this point, if you haven't realized, we're having a conflict getting said evidence from one agency to another to the prosecution to be able to do the proper prosecution of the case. Whether this suspect is guilty or innocent, he's not getting the fair shake of the evidence coming in a timely manner or correctly. There's too much we don't have that. There's too much it doesn't exist. There's just too much swirling around that causes this case to be the biggest headache maybe of all time. Because it's visually in front of all of us to see it. And now the judge is possibly making it worse. Rarely do you ever hear anything about a grand jury or their deliberations. We're already hearing it in this case, in the Idaho 4. That's not precedent. That's unusual. Do grand juries get disputed? Yes, it happens a lot. Does the info get released to where people like you or I would know that 6 of the grand jurors possibly had questions? Maybe they possibly didn't speak or read English appropriately. Maybe they didn't fully understand the guidelines of what was expected of them during a grand jury indictment and how they would come back with their decision. How many other cases is this involved in that we don't know about? It's very visual in the Idaho 4. I think we see it. We know what's going on. We may not fully understand the full realm of it, but we're watching it, and in our minds and in our hearts we go, oh, this could be a problem. unless you're closed-minded and just say he's guilty and it doesn't matter anyway. But is that the way we, as a society, as a country, as a world, should find whether someone's innocent or guilty? It should all be based off of how we feel or inaccurate evidence? I don't think that's what we as the people want. I don't even think the people right now that have found this individual guilty inside really are okay and comfortable with the fact mistakes are being made. They're being made. The sad thing about it is, I get it, and people are going to say, well, it's a death penalty case, and if he's guilty, and we feel he's guilty, he's going to get the death penalty anyway. But what if he's not? What if the evidence has been mishandled in a way, and the story's been based off of something that's incorrect? Just like many that feel as though some of the released information is absolute gospel, like the Amazon knife purchase being delivered, which has never been confirmed or stated as a confirmed evidentiary discoverable piece of this case, yet so many people think that it is. People are now making the cell phone pings that are completely, for years that they've been using this in the courtroom, deemed as sketchy. Now it's a dead science, and it's not. Otherwise, more court cases would adhere to it and use it to convict people. Touch DNA is not a guaranteed thing. That's why a lot of court cases don't use it. We're watching cases on pretty much a daily basis now enter into courtrooms where it's not being handled appropriately. Do you think the judge of the Delphi case is handling this appropriately? Absolutely no chance that this is ever going to be seen as appropriate. She takes council members of a defendant off of a case and replaces them with her own choice. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. And I'll tell you what, if I was a defendant and that happened, the new attorney that the judge put to defend me better not come within a couple of feet of me, because I'm going to rectify the issue. We, the people that are watching this happen, have to push for better. Even in the Alex Murdaugh case, whether you feel he's guilty or not guilty, whether you feel that man tragically took his wife and his son's own life, and of course a lot of the emotion of people finding him guilty stems from the fact he was a con artist that stole from just about anybody that cared about him or needed him they needed his help, and instead he took from them. So I get the frustration, I get the power of the mind to say, well, this man has to be guilty. But now, look at what's arising there. There's issues in that case, whether it be in the jury, mishandling their deliberations and the way they should be handling what was presented to them. How many cases do you think, outside of just these few we're watching right now currently, there are failures within them, and someone got found guilty that was not guilty? He was later, or she was later, deemed innocent. It happens all the time. It happens every day. It's mistakes. Could Gabby Petito have been saved from what happened to her if our law enforcement and our justice system better handled that situation? I know, and I guarantee you I know for a fact, If I were to lay hands on my wife, or my wife had laid hands on me, or a normal human just laid hands on his wife, somebody typically goes to jail. I know if it was me, I would be in jail in a heartbeat. They would protect the young female from me because I got angry, and it's called domestic. Either you go spend the night in jail or whatever it might be. It cost that young lady her life. It's very sad. But these are the errors that are happening. Idaho 4, a judge, not at all educated within DNA or IgG or anything that he's going to be reviewing said evidence to deem whether it's discoverable to the defense, is ridiculous. First of all, we'll even see if he gets anything to review because the FBI hadn't turned it over yet. They seem to be more interactive back at the home, the crime scene, doing whatever they claim they're doing. That should have been done way back when, but now they're doing it. So here we go with more missteps in an investigation. How do you build your displays and your visuals? And if you want to use, data of where this was or that, you already removed half the house, and you definitely took all the property out of it. So none of that should even be admissible. That's done. That's over. It's not the same crime scene. Come on, legitimately, people, it's not the same crime scene anymore. Looking over at the Delphi case, when you do, what is it? That's a witness sketch. But they got 3 of them, and none of them even look remotely like the same person. None of them look remotely like the same person. So how do you explain that away? Of course, you investigate, you build a case, but you still have to explain away why certain things no longer fit within the case based off of your evidence and your investigative skills. And at this point, with all the gag orders and the concealing of evidence, how are we ever going to know what the truth is? Because if a court deems you or I are never going to know that truth, we just have to go with they found someone guilty, so we either got to believe it, or he was let loose, he was innocent, so he must be innocent. Why? Because we're never presented with the ultimate end result of evidence. I get it. You got to protect people. You got to protect integrity of people's lives, their families, and everything of that nature. I get it. But who's going to hold the people accountable to ensure things are done appropriately when everything's concealed, hidden, and doesn't exist? It's not here. Or you go over to the Delphi case and the judge decides to remove all this documentation, bury it, make it hard to decipher, make it hard to find. These are public records that many of times are buried and hidden. For those that want to actually see them can't. It's just food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. These concepts, these cases have to be looked at in a bigger setting than just guilty or innocent. There's more to it than that. There is more to it to that. We have laws that govern how things are supposed to work within an investigation, within an interrogation, to an arrest, to a court process, to a punishment. There's steps. There's steps. there's guidelines, there's ways that this is supposed to work. And I personally, having been through it and having to endure how it works, I can see it right away. Like when I watch the Idaho 4 case, it perks my attention right away, and I go, well, that's not right. Well, that's not right. For those that are not accustomed to being in that situation and haven't got the law background, which I'm not a lawyer, ladies and gentlemen, but I've had to intertwine myself with them enough trying to defend cases that I've learned how to kind of see little things and flaws. Does that mean I know the laws and the regulations by heart? No, I don't. And I'll never claim that I do. But what I do know is a gut feeling when I look at an investigation and I can say, well, that doesn't seem right. There was a lot of people in the home contaminating the scene before it was secured. So now the scene's contaminated, but not once is the prosecution or anybody involved in investigating this case put up their hands and say, look, this is going to be a very difficult one because our scene was contaminated. So it's going to take us an X amount of time to nullify certain people. This whole law enforcement came out and nullified people within a day or two. And how do you nullify certain people that have even left the city before you got a chance to investigate? You have to do it by the guidelines, and it's not being done that way. It's not. So what do we do at this point? If something's not done correctly, do we allow the process to keep moving forward? You find somebody incorrectly on whether it be guilty or not guilty. If they're found guilty, do we sentence somebody we know was inappropriately found guilty? And then do we let the appeal process step in and try to fix the problem we already know is there? Or maybe they'll just fail at it too, because trust me, I've seen people lose an appeal 3 or 4 times and then 25, 30 years later get released because they were innocent. So even the appeal process is not guaranteed to solve the problem. How many high-profile cases do we need to pop up back to back to back that's going to be an appeal issue? Why can't we nip it right at the beginning? Why can't we, as a society, as people, instead of believing the holy grail of what's released as bogus evidence, or that this crime scene was correctly locked down without contamination, we can't believe that because we saw it with our own eyes. We know. We already know. And we know things are being hidden from us. Yet half of our society is still finding the gentleman guilty without actually valuing the rights of a justice system. Why are we overlooking that? Why are we not following what is set forth to give someone the right to defend themselves against charges that are brought against them? Or at least help the prosecution with proper evidence finding and discoverable evidence even being turned over from the agency to the prosecutor. I mean, we have that problem on top of it. It's food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. Food for thought. That's one thing that I always strive to do. I just want you to think along, use the great brains that you guys have, visually overlook what's presented to you, and come to the conclusion based off of your feelings, your ideas, your thoughts, and then bring in a little bit of what we know to be actual law and followed guidelines to figure out whether this is being done appropriately. I'm ARHayes. The Convict's Thoughts. It was great seeing you and hope to see you again soon.